Hi, everyone. I'm Sunyin Shang. I'm the Executive Director for the Coach K Center on Leadership and Ethics at Duke University's Fuqua School of Business. And welcome to our COLE-MBAA Leading Through Challenges conversations. And this is a series that we launched earlier this year because we understand everyone is dealing with a lot of challenges, and we're all learning how to be more resilient and how to lead from where we are. And in this speaker series, it's done in partnership with the MBAA. And then we also have other partners across the rest of Duke University who are the Fuqua Office of Community and Inclusion, the Duke Masters in Engineering Management, the Duke Baldwin Scholars Program, and Duke Student Affairs. And so we are so excited tonight to have our speaker, Laurinda Rainey. I am going to now pass the floor to our moderator tonight, Rose Nguyen. Rose is a rising second year here at the Fuqua School of Business. She is a COLE Leadership Fellow who is working on our leader development programs within the fellowship, and she is also an active MBAA member. So Rose, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sanyin, for the introduction, and thank you to everyone for being here tonight. I hope that you all are staying safe and well. It is my great honor to welcome Ms. Laurinda Rainey, our guest speaker for this evening. Laurinda has had three passions that have guided most of her life: family, Duke, and competition. For more than 20 years, Laurinda has transformed teams, projects, and organizations with her strategic approach, innovative problem solving, and extensive marketing experience. At JP Morgan Chase, Laurinda is currently a managing director and general manager of the travel and affinity portfolio. Prior to Chase, Laurinda held leadership roles at Walmart and American Express, where she launched new strategies to reach different customer profiles and improved digital capabilities. Both in and outside of the office, Laurinda is a mentor and consultant, helping to increase racial and gender diversity of business leadership across Fortune 500 companies. Laurinda holds a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology, certificate in Markets and Management Studies, and an MBA with a product management concentration, all from Duke. Given Laurinda's experience and insights, we are very excited to hear from her tonight about the role that adversity plays in both unifying groups and in acknowledging the fundamental differences in human experience, including how we can all leverage our adverse experiences to support our own growth. As Sanyin mentioned, her introductory conversation will be about 10 minutes, followed by an open Q&A, during which we encourage you to please feel free to write your questions in the chat box and we will address them. So without further ado, Laurinda, I'll hand the floor over to you.
Hi, Rose. Thank you so much. And hi, Sanya and everyone else. I'm really excited to be with you this evening. Clearly, I have a lot of love for Duke. And so I'm hoping that some of the tidbits and insights that I will share tonight will help you all be great Dukies that can bring on more great Dukies into your careers and companies in the future as well. So as Rose mentioned, I want to touch on three different aspects of how I have addressed adversity throughout my life and how that has helped cultivate me into the leader that I am today, and how essentially it's helped build the muscle of resilience. There's a lot of research and reporting that talks about resilience. It's kind of like leadership. People ask the question, are you born with it or can you be taught it? And it's really like a muscle. If you've ever been a sport or trained for anything, you have to keep breaking down a muscle. That's actually how you build strength in any kind of athletic experience. You break down the muscle, and as it repairs, it gets stronger. So I'm going to share some really personal stories that have happened in my life, and I'll give you some insights of how it has caused some heartache, some pain, but how I've then grown from it to be stronger. And I encourage you to choose courage every day. Lots of times you have to think through, there are fears that hold you in and can stop you from doing things. Your goal in life actually is not to be fearless. Your goal in life is to really be able to face fear with courage, acknowledge the risk, acknowledge the uncertainty that's there, but you're going to lean into it anyway. So I hope that you'll ask lots of questions throughout this evening that can help you think through how you can have more courage, how you can do what I call flip the Rubik's Cube in a different direction, and then approach it with a fresh set of eyes with your courage in tow so that you can grow and get stronger from the experience. So I'll start off with talking about my passion for family. I am from a huge family. I am the youngest of 16 children. My parents, I know, yes, 1 and a 6. My parents were married for 50 years, and they had a child pretty much every other year. So there's 11 boys and 5 girls. And I like to say that they learned how to raise such a strong family from my grandparents. So my mother is one of 15. And my grandmother was born in 1902. My mother and father were born in 1936 and 1937. And so bigger families and Southern families, like from an agrarian farming perspective, were just more common back then. But I am my grandmother's 92nd grandchild. And so we have a huge family. And I'm now going to share what's more of a sad story of like, in light of everything that's going on in the world today, my first experience with understanding race started when I was 5 years old. So the reason why I give you context of the size of my family is when my parents got married in the 50s, my oldest brothers and sisters, say the first half of us, went to segregated schools. The second half of my brothers and sisters were in schools as they started to be integrated. And I think my parents felt a little more comfortable and confident that things might not be the same for their younger children as they were difficult for their older children. And when I was in school, I will never forget one day I was on the playground. It was ice cream recess, and someone who was in my class wanted to cut in front of me in line. And my parents had taught me that even though I was a minority and I was young, I was the youngest in the family, they taught me to have a big voice. And so I stood up for myself and I wouldn't let this person cut in front of me in line. Their reaction was that they spit in my face and called me the N-word. And I busted into tears. And there were kids on the playground. Some took me to a teacher to console me. Some took the other little girl to another teacher. And it was a good life lesson for me in that moment that everything's not black and white, that I was helped by people who were white and I was hurt by someone who was white. And when I got home from school that day, my parents had a long conversation with me about race and how to respond to things like this going forward. And it also led to a deep conversation where they taught me a lot about Black history. And they taught me a lot about Martin Luther King Jr. so that I wouldn't become an angry child in the experiences that I would have. Because by the time I graduated from high school, I was the only minority in my class, the class before me and the class behind me. So I was often misunderstood. And so when you think about adversity as a group or adversity as an individual, these were trying circumstances as an individual person. There were lots of times where I was called an Oreo by white people as a compliment because I was really intelligent. And so they would say, "You're brown on the outside, but you're white on the inside." And my intelligence and my Blackness can coexist. There were times that because I spoke proper English, like my Black friends who were like a lot of my family members who I would visit and hang out with would say, "Why do you talk so white?" And my response would be, "I'm just talking English." And so I'm just speaking English. And so I felt really alienated as a child. And my family gave me a strong core sense of identity. And so the muscle that built within me was an understanding of who I was and having confidence in what my purpose was and how do I show up in certain experiences. And that way, no matter whether people were trying to be negative or with backhanded compliments, I let that all just get off of me. And I only let people who I knew loved me speak into me and speak into my identity. And so you have to take with you the understanding of not everyone is on your team. Not everyone can help you understand your identity. Not everyone can help you understand your purpose. So when you face adversity alone, you have to know who is in your core group that can help give you strength and courage to keep moving forward in the direction that you feel created to do. The second thing that I would touch on is like my love for Duke. So I'm a huge basketball fan as well. March Madness not happening this year has like crushed me. And I would say that my ability to go from that small rural school in Arkansas to attend Duke was literally a miracle and a dream that I thought of. Like when I was like a teenager, I thought I want to go to school at Duke, mostly because it was a great basketball institution. And then I had brothers who were professors. And so they helped me do a lot of research on colleges that interested me. So in the 8th and 9th grade, I started writing letters to colleges. And so I started getting all of this information back. And I started trying to figure out, well, where could I go? Did I want to go to Harvard? Did I want to go to Duke? And where was going to be the best place that I could fit in? And as I did all that research, I'll talk about collective adversity, right? So little small schools that don't have AP programs don't have a lot of kids that go to any of the schools that I just listed, right? And so I would spend lots of time talking with, I was a student body president. I would talk to the school counselor and I would talk to the school principal and the superintendent and ask like, I want to go to these amazing schools. What do I need to do? What can I lead? What efforts can we do? What community service can I do here, there, everywhere? And how can I help our school be better? And what can I do so that I can keep growing, so that I can go to one of these elite institutions, because that's what I want to do. I want to leave Arkansas and I want to like go make a mark. I'm a fairly linear thinker. And so like, my thought of going to Duke for undergrad was because I wanted to go to Fuqua. And I read somewhere that if you went to Duke undergrad, it helped your chances of going to Fuqua. And so it kind of all mapped out for me. I don't know how, but when you think about the diligence and the studying and the preparation, again, it's having people on your team, but understanding that this wasn't an individual thing. I couldn't do this alone. I needed to talk to the superintendent. I needed to talk to the school counselor. I needed to understand where are the programs. I took my mother all over the state of Arkansas. Like when Harvard and Duke and places would come through Little Rock, which was an hour away from where I lived, we would go and we would learn, and then we would sit and we would talk about it. And I will never forget my junior year, my brother, who was a professor at Clemson in South Carolina, his mother-in-law took me to Duke. So I had to visit the campuses, and I had it was written, it would be a miracle if I go to school here. And so it's so great to have that picture with my graduation picture from undergrad and my graduation picture from business school, to see it all come to life and into fruition. And so when you have adversity, you'll notice a theme that I keep mentioning is like having a team that supports you. You can't do these things alone. And so as you find challenges, as you find hurdles to overcome, it's really important to understand who can be your advocates that can help make you stronger, and who can be your advocates to help you understand where you're weak. So the third point I'll come to is competition. And for me, it's kind of natural. My family's super competitive. Obviously, Dukies are really competitive. But kind of a bit of a twist of fate, because I always say I look younger than I am, but I am a cancer survivor. And so in that battle with cancer, it started for me in my 20s, because my oldest sister was diagnosed when she was 32. And so what my doctor thought would be a benign test, just exploratory, because my sister was diagnosed so young, ended up leading to test after test, and one lumpectomy and then another string of testing. And it was a really emotional period in my life that lasted for about 10 years. And when I left New York City and I moved to Arkansas, the doctors in Arkansas weren't quite used to dealing with cases like mine. And so I unfortunately had an older brother who lived in Houston. And as I started exploring the options that the doctors in Arkansas were recommending, my brother was like, please, before you do something extreme, just come here, like go to MD Anderson. He had friends who had unfortunately been treated there, or fortunately been treated there, because they kind of advised me as I went through my own journey. And being at MD Anderson, like while I was living in Arkansas, there's a couple of things. And the reason why I say competition, it's like the competitive side of me chose to bet on me. Like I chose to fly to Texas. I chose to invest more money because the doctors in Texas were going to cost more than the doctors in Arkansas. I took the time and the effort to really understand and research and ask questions. And I think what fueled that is I'm going to win. Like cancer's not going to win in this case. I'm going to win, right? And so you have to decide when there are things that come your way that may seem like they're insurmountable, or you don't necessarily, I apologize, I'm getting a little emotional, like they may seem insurmountable. You have to figure out what are the ways that you can find the right tools and the right resources so that you can bet on yourself, even if the odds seem stacked against you. And ultimately, that is the way that you continue to grow and you continue to thrive. So thank you. What questions do you have for me?
Laurinda, thank you so much for your powerful vulnerability and your personal experiences of adversity. We really appreciate your courage and your perspective in being here today. I want to start out by acknowledging that this topic of adversity is particularly relevant in today's world and in light of recent events. Not only the COVID-19 pandemic, along with all the instances of pervasive systemic racism in this country, and more have brought experiences of adversity really to the forefront of our human experience this year. And on one hand, you have something like COVID, which has created almost this quasi-universal or collective experience of diversity across the global economy. And then on the other hand, the continued acts of racism have emphasized that certain groups just experience fundamentally disproportionate degrees and types of adversity, and are starting from different baselines in this regard. And so I'm curious, from Laurinda, just your experience, how can you help us conceptualize this dual expression of adversity, kind of both as the potential to have, a unifying force in certain times, and then, also being a very important differentiator between human experiences?
Yeah. So I think empathy is the strongest muscle that you can develop. And lots of people all around the world, they understand sympathy. Like you hear a bad story and you're like, oh, I feel really bad for you. But rarely do we pause and think of how can I put myself in their shoes? And I think if we pause to think about how can I put myself in someone else's shoes, we would view a lot of our challenges in society differently. So COVID has revealed that, America is a first world country and a third world country in the same place, oftentimes in the same city. I live here in Philadelphia, and there are parts of Philadelphia that are the most impoverished areas in our nation. I live in a 46-story high rise. My experience in Philadelphia is night and day different if I go 10 blocks in another direction. And what COVID has revealed is that there are lots of people who have not thought through that what's keeping our economy going are lots of people who actually are in jobs where they don't have the choice of, can they work from home? Can they still provide for their families? And so the risk that they're taking, it requires some empathy for us to think through how do we change the systems and the policies in our country so that there actually is a safety net, so that people don't feel like if they're sick, they should still go work in the chicken plant today. That if they feel like they're sick, they actually shouldn't show up to be the janitorial service that's cleaning whatever facility where they're working. But there's not a safety net that exists in our country for some populations. And I think that in this time, as you all are leaders who are thinking about the next steps in your career and in your future, I would challenge you all to think about, when you have seats at the table, how do you think about creating those safety nets? You are part of a group of people who will be leaders in organizations where you are shaping policy. Whether it's policy in government or policy in a business, your decisions matter. Your decisions will matter as far as like what type of organizations are receiving your advertising dollars. If you're in marketing, your decisions will matter of what types of cities are hosting your events. And so then they can hire more people, as in like they can fund more small businesses and they can hire more restaurants. Your decisions will matter in so many ways. You have to be the leaders who think about the 6 and 7 degrees of separation from the choices that you make. And you have to make those decisions with empathy, because it's not just about the paycheck that you take home so that you can live in beautiful high rises. It's about how do you give those dollars to organizations, but how are the decisions that you make every day that flow through our system that actually can create a safety net or provide a different safety net. And if you have empathy, it will cause you to think about those decisions in the right way.
Thank you, Laurinda. I think all of us do have so much agency that we may or may not know we have, and certainly empathy is the perfect channel to help us understand how to drive that to its most powerful impact. I want to go back to something you said at the beginning of when you were speaking about how it's not the goal to be fearless, but you have to acknowledge the risk that's involved. And I think, when we do talk about this concept of diversity, a lot of times it's often associated with resilience and the concept of the growth mindset. And so a lot of us, I'm sure, have been told, about the importance of rising up from adverse experiences and overcoming obstacles and almost, ignoring them sometimes. But that neglects often the importance of learning from them. And so, based on your experience, how can all of us leverage adversity better for our own personal and professional development? And what techniques have you found, if that's the right word, for, almost training ourselves to rise up and grow stronger from adverse experiences?
So most of you are probably type A personality, just because you're in this room, in this school, just a long shot guess. And so the first thing I'm going to suggest is not going to sound easy or natural. And it's taking time to pause, journal, meditate, and allow yourself to feel. The realization for me with that actually came when I was recovering from my cancer surgery. I had lots of complications, and as I was having one of my follow-up appointments, a doctor who I had just met had talked to me for maybe 10 minutes, and she said to me, "Laurinda, you think too much." And I thought she was joking. And so I laughed, and she was like, "I'm serious." And so she said, "I just asked you what you do, and I can tell what your day job is very complex, but you described it in less than 5 minutes. So you're always strategizing, analyzing, calculating, processing." And I said, "Yes, of course, I'm supposed to." And she said, "No, you're not. You need to rest." I said, "I sleep." And she said, "No, your brain needs a break when you're awake." I left that appointment thinking this doctor was crazy. And I proceeded to talk to my boyfriend at the time, my family, and the response in every one of those conversations was, "Yes, you think too much. Like, you don't relax. You don't rest. Like, even when you're watching a movie, you're still doing like 4 other things at the same time." And so the realization of multiple people who then knew me made me think, okay, I probably should learn about this whole mindfulness concept. And so the like earth-shattering thing for me. Like the doctor who proceeded to talk for like 20 or 30 minutes to me about mindfulness, she explained to me that Seinfeld and Michael Jordan, like they practice mindfulness. And I don't know if you watch ESPN's The Last Dance. There's one episode where there's a person who says Michael Jordan's gift was not that he could jump the highest, that he practiced the hardest. It was that he was present in every moment. And so when adversity comes, taking the time to just be and allow yourself to feel, it can be scary to feel all of the things that you feel and to not try to problem solve and think your way out of it. I used to say it was a sign of my intellect that I could come up with 20 different scenarios. I'm like Dr. Strange, right? Like I can come up with all the different scenarios in like a few moments of calculation. That just means that I am overtaxing my brain and I'm not actually allowing myself to experience. And if you can't experience, then you can't reflect. So that's the next step. So taking the time to feel, taking the time to pause, then the next step is taking the time to journal and reflect and then think through how are these things affecting you? How are you learning from this moment? When I ended up being on medical leave for 6 months, I kept thinking like, I just want to get back to my life. I just want to get back to my normal life. And then I had this epiphany of this is your life. Like however long this is your life. So what are you going to learn from this moment? You're not working on a business plan. You're not designing a campaign. You're not working on a development plan for your team. This is you. What are you going to do? And what are you going to learn from this moment? And taking that time to reflect then helped me actually become much more comfortable with vulnerability, in all honesty. I know lots of people and I have a huge family and lots of people were like, why are you still in Texas? and so I, as a marketer, decided I needed to come up with a communication plan so that I couldn't keep having the same conversation over and over again. For me, the realization of feeling what I was going through is that to have 20 phone calls with people who loved and cared about me over and over again was emotionally exhausting for me. And the other thing that I learned during that time is that as able-bodied as we all are, we probably haven't really felt the meaning of put your own oxygen mask on first before you put the oxygen mask on other people. And I realized that I was running through life, gasping for air, trying to put oxygen masks on everybody else around me. And I'm about to suffocate. I'm giving myself the bare minimum of what I needed. And the time that I had where I literally didn't have the strength, I didn't have the energy, forced me to pause and think through, Laurinda, what do you need? How do you need to operate? How do you need to show up? And then you have to prioritize where the energy can go once you've done that. And so then talking that through with other people, like, a most eye-opening conversation for me was there was a person who was visiting from where I normally lived in Texas. They were there for some business reason and they texted and said they wanted to come by and visit. And I said, I'm tired. I don't want visitors. And they said, can I at least bring you dinner? I said, I'm not hungry. Someone's already cooked for me this week. And so they were like, but I'm leaving town tomorrow. And I said, okay. I didn't ask you to come and visit me while you're here. So they were like, well, I won't stay long, but can I at least bring you dinner that you can eat over the weekend? And so I acquiesced. And like the whole evening, I felt so rude. They were there for maybe an hour. They brought me dinner. I ate part of it. I saved part of it. And when we finished talking, I laid down. And about 15 minutes after, like when I say I finished eating, I laid down. And about 15 minutes later, they said, I can see that you're tired. I'm going to go. But during the dinner conversation, I had given them some advice. So they maybe were there for 30 or 45 minutes. And afterwards, I felt so rude. This person had gone out of their way to come and find where I was staying, bring me dinner from a restaurant that was nowhere near where they were staying. And the next day they sent me a text that they were so blessed with the advice that I had given them, that it gave them the insight that they needed to make the next decisions with their career. They enjoyed the time that they spent with me. And I realized that what I felt I needed to give, or what I should have given, as in like 3 or 4 hours of my time, wasn't necessary for them to benefit from the time that they spent with me. And I never even told them that I felt like I was being rude or any of that. So it wasn't a text to me to make me feel better about asking them to leave. It was a genuine exchange. And it was an epiphany for me of I needed to do the things that were best for me. And when I do what's best for me, I can then show up and give people what's best for them. And that is a healthy balance. So the 3 things in total are: take time to meditate and allow yourself to feel. Secondly, take time to reflect and journal. And third, take the time for yourself that you need, but talk through things, be vulnerable, and learn how to ask for what you need, and then give what you have in excess, because somebody else can benefit from your time, your talent, or your treasure if you have excess treasure.
Thanks, Laurinda. I think you make up a good point that it is hard for many of us to know what is actually best for us. So just taking the time to think about it is important. I want to share a question from Ashley Fink in our audience. She says, you spoke about the importance of advocacy in building resilience and the tools to tackle adversity. Who were your advocates at Fuqua? What did they do to help you build those muscles?
Yeah. So there are 3 people that I'll bring out, and you've probably met all of them. So one of them is Sharon Thompson. So Sharon, I met on my pre-MBA journey, and I spent lots of time in Sharon's office as I was going through my first year. And a large part of time that I spent with both Sharon and Liz was because my mother actually passed away from cancer 2 weeks before business school started. And Duke offered for me to defer my enrollment for a whole year and take time. And I thought about it and I prayed about it. And my mother had gotten sick the year before. Like, I had already taken the GMAT. I've been working on my essays, and we were trying to figure out what exactly was wrong because her health declined so rapidly. The day I got accepted to Fuqua was the day she was diagnosed with leukemia. And then she passed away within months. And those 2 weeks that I had to think about whether I wanted to defer or not, the decision that I made was I needed to still go to school, because if I didn't, I would then have to fill my life for a year. And every day I would think the only reason why I'm not in college or in business school right now is because my mother's not here. And that's not what she would want for me. So Sharon was like, are you sure you really want to do this? So I spent a lot of time with Sharon, assuring her that I was ready. And then I took a position in our Section 6 cabinet. And so Sharon would often check in on me. Are you doing too many things? Nope, this is what I need to do. I'm taking the right amount of focus. I have the right support system. But Sharon was so supportive and all throughout my first year. And then in my second year, my oldest sister also passed away from cancer. And so the time that I spent with Sharon, because Sharon's also from a large family, was a great balance and helped me have a great perspective to always remember what was most important as I was thinking about developing as a leader, but remembering how important my family and my dad and everybody at home was as I was trying to think through how to juggle my own growth. Secondly, it was someone who worked in the Career Center, Bev Porter. She's now left Fuqua and she works at NC State. But Bev gave me a quote that has always stuck with me, because when I came back, I had an internship with P&G because I went to their brand camp before my first year of business school. And so I didn't really have to focus so much on the career process throughout my first year. And when I came back for my second year, I had an offer from P&G. And because my sister was sick, Bev would often ask me, she was like, "You're juggling lots of balls, Laurinda, and you have to make sure you don't drop the glass ones. We all have diamonds, we have glass, we have rubber, we have plastic. So as you're juggling all of the balls of life, you want to research, you want to explore." Because I actually came back and said, I have enough going on in my life. I'm just going to accept this offer from P&G. And Bev pushed me and she said, "You are not going to have your pick of this many companies at your feet with all of the support around you ever again in your life." And so Bev pulled me out of, like, my first year I made through, and my second year, when I was about to go like head in the sand, Bev said, "No, you came here to think about the next steps of your career. Let's think through all of the balls that you're juggling and we'll make sure that you don't pick up too many." And so she helped me be very selective in my career process, so that I make sure that I didn't drop any of the diamonds in the glass. The third person I would say is actually like two friends of mine who are still, like, we travel every year together. So we call ourselves the trio. We actually have a WhatsApp chat. Only one of us is married now. But Gretel Kerma was a classmate of mine, and she's now in Ghana. My other classmate was Shannon Dean. And Gretel and I actually met on the pre-MBA circuit. And so we chose to go to Duke together. Shannon likes to tell the story. When she first met us, we ignored her. And so we met her at like a Bain consulting day. And so, but the three of us came together through our 2 years together. We travel together every year, either internationally or domestically. I think I've been to every continent with Gretel except for South America and Antarctica. And so those two, I always say Gretel is like the mother in my life because she's now a mother, so it's apropos. But she's the most mature one of the three of us. So we're a great balance with one another. We push each other, but we also hold each other accountable to the truths of what we say that we want to do. And so I hope that you make lifelong friends like that while you're in business school, who can be your peers and push you and encourage you, but also deflate your head if it gets too big.
So I want to sort of close today. You mentioned some of your experiences at Fuqua and the mentors that you had there, and you also were a COLE Leadership Fellow. And because this is a COLE event, I want to ask you to help us sort of bring this more directly back to the concept of leadership in this conversation of adversity. And so you have, had a variety of notable leadership roles, both professional and personal. And you have also faced some very impactful experiences of adversity. And so I'm curious, through sort of both of those lenses, how do you view the role that adversity plays in developing strong leadership skills? And how might we all leverage experiences of adversity as we go beyond undergraduate degrees and MBAs to become more empathetic and impactful leaders in the global world?
So I would say, like, my journey of being the leader that I am today began for me in COLE. As being like a second year fellow to first year fellows, and understanding how do you get people with different personalities, different intentions, different motivations to communicate with one another. Because as a leader, that's really your job. Your job is to actually help people communicate better. I manage really large co-brand businesses, but the crux of my job is figuring out how do I get my technologists within Chase and the technologists with an IHG to make sure that when they say the same words, they mean the same thing, because people often don't. And that's often how people misunderstand and miscommunicate. It happens in relationships with individuals, like intimate, like husband and wife. It happens in corporate experiences. Like that's how an executive can say something to their team of their top 100 leaders, and then nothing happens for a couple of months because they thought it was a suggestion versus this is a mandate. And so words matter, and how you communicate really matters. And so the crux of everything comes back to, how do you simplify decisions? Because when you can simplify decisions, that's when you can get really crystal clear on what you communicate. And so that simplicity goes hand in hand with transparency. So you often have to find that balance, because like part of my job is negotiation. Well, information is power. So I don't want to reveal too much information, but you also have to think through, what is the appropriate level of transparency so that I can really build trust, but also what's the appropriate level of transparency so that I can influence appropriately and make sure that I am taking care of the things that I'm supposed to hold dear as a leader. Because at some point you are responsible for driving certain initiatives. And obviously you always want to make sure that it's not zero-sum game. You want to think about how you can make the pie bigger, but sometimes you can't make the pie bigger. And so simplicity and transparency can help you understand those trade-offs and help you make wise decisions of how much information you should share as you are navigating those spaces. And then I'll come back to my favorite, empathy. The biggest compliment for me that I receive from members of my team has been that they are so excited that they chose to take jobs working for me. I recently had an experience with this during COVID. There's a person who just joined my team in August of last year. And I recruited them from another company. And the person is they've worked in the industry for a long time. They're older than me. And they said, I am so glad that I've come to work on your team, because you have created this environment where people are open and they trust one another. And so a lot of teams are talking about, through COVID, it's been difficult of how do you keep a team environment? My team has honestly gotten closer during this time. I have a team of about 15 people that directly report into me, and we have a happy hour every week. And first we went through and played random games of, let's talk about the DIY projects that everybody's doing around the house. Then we did let's talk about what are the shows that you're binge watching right now. And through all of those conversations, everyone got to know each other.
Toast with butter and honey?
Yes, I do.
Because we don't have any more.
Got to know each other better in a different way so that they could really connect. And there are some members of my team who live alone. There are some members of my team who want to run away from their 5-year-old child. And so in addition to our happy hour, we have a texting string. So we have multiple ways that we communicate at work so that we can be transparent and we can be really efficient. I personally communicate very clearly. Email is not an effective way to engage with Laurinda. If you have a business priority, sending me an email and then saying you sent me an email does not mean said email will get answered. So I tell them all of the other ways that they can reach me. We have persistent chat tools, we have IMs, and I explain this to them in the context of, I need you to understand how many emails I get in a given day. And so I have a system of how I prioritize. So I'm teaching them how to empathize with me so that I can engage with them. And the benefit of that is they all often say, for as busy as you are, because I've been in meetings literally since 8 a.m. this morning, and I still respond when they send me things. They know how to flag things. They know to IM me and tell me that they need me to follow up on something. And the business still flows. I never want to be a bottleneck. And so you have to think through the ways as a leader, as your calendar gets full, as other things come on your plate, you have to be intentional about finding ways to help your team still reach you and understand what your team needs from you. And to do that most effectively, you have to communicate to your team what you need. So it kind of comes back to that adversity, understanding what you need, knowing how to communicate what you need, and reflect on that. And it's a 24-hour cycle. Every day you got to get better. Every day you might need something a little different, and you got to reset and then recommunicate when you have new needs.
That's wonderful. I think we can all relate to the constant growth experience that is coming out of adversity, and certainly leveraging others and through empathy and through serving them also is incredibly important. So before we close, and we're a little over time, but I'm going to just have one more question in light of our current state of the world. So Carolina Ortega from our audience wants to know your perspective about the current pandemic and how to be resilient during this time. And there are other things happening now too, where, other people, I'm sure, are interested in advice for how to stay strong when it is very challenging to do so, and how to inspire that in others.
So I say we're going through two pandemics right now, right? So one is this scientific pandemic of COVID, the coronavirus that has infected the world and literally turned it upside down. And there is the impact on the economic environment is unreal. It is, it's shocking because I can even think back to March. Like I've worked in different industries, right? So I've seen fast-paced industries, slow-paced industries, and I have never seen the rate of change in 24 hours of consumer habits, consumer needs, technology development. Like it's unreal. And so that's the first pandemic. So there's a medical crisis and there's an economic crisis, and both of them are created by coronavirus. There's also a pandemic of systemic racism that's actually been infecting our world for well over 400 years. And I get hope, but I get concern that, the news cycle will shift and then people might move on. But what gives me hope is that the conversations that I'm having with people right now, minorities are always aware of race. And a lot of people, I think, in the past would think that, oh, you're just overly sensitive, or, oh, you're reading into that. But now, like, I was talking with someone the other day, and it's like, minorities feel seen, especially African Americans, Black Americans feel seen, because usually there's this, what I call, which comes first, the chicken or the egg. So I've been a really vocal person within my company at Chase, sharing that I have reached this point in my career mostly because I know how to have a poker face, right? So I don't show everything I'm thinking. And usually Black Americans, when things like the murder of George Floyd and the murder of Breonna Taylor and the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, on top of all of the histories, like everyone has a trigger moment that they can think back to. Like for me, when I became really emotional about all of this was the death of Trayvon Martin. The murder of Trayvon Martin for me triggered, of my 33 nieces and nephews, I've got over 20 nephews. And when I see the image of Trayvon Martin in a hoodie, knowing that he's carrying Skittles, I think of my nephews leaving playing basketball, leaving their friend's house, and that could happen to them. And so for me, I think of Trayvon Martin, I think of Tamir Rice, and I think of all the little boys that are my little nephews, and so for me, I decided, because I had gone through the week of after George Floyd was murdered, and I cried every day that week. But at work, I was all smiles. I was acting like nothing was wrong. Like, that's what most Black Americans do. And that Friday, because that Thursday night, we have a family book club. We're really close and nerdy. And so we have a family book club, and we actually were reading the book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. And my brother told me the story of his 13-year-old son being fearful for his life. Like, it was his birthday. And so we had all just sang happy birthday to him. And when he left the room, my brother said, like, they had talked about, like, he has 2 sisters. Should we go for a drive and, get away from the sisters? They live in California. We'll go drive by the beach. And he said, no, we'll get shot. Dead serious. They live in one of the nicest parts of Los Angeles. But my 13-year-old nephew now computes that if we leave the house right now, there are people who don't understand us and they're going to shoot us. And he's 13. My 17-year-old nephew, like, he couldn't be in the book club anymore because for him, like, even today, so he's a rising senior. He asked a white classmate who's his friend to go to prom with him. Her dad said, you can't go to prom with a white boy. And not only, a black boy, and not only can you not go to prom with him, you can't talk to him anymore. So not only did he not get a prom date, but he lost a friend. And so that's how we ended up reading books about race, to try to help give the kids language and understanding. And we read one book, and then we chose, this is our second book. And the first book was written by a children's author. It's stamped Racism, Anti-Racism in You. It's a children's author, Jason Reynolds, who adapted Ibram X. Kendi's book, Stamped from the Beginning. And the second book is written by Ibram X. Kendi, and it's called How to Be an Anti-Racist. And so my nephew, who's 17, he really enjoyed the first book in our conversations. But the second book, it's a lot of policy and a lot of history. And he said, I'm just trying to figure out how to be an 18-year-old Black man because I feel so much safer as a 17-year-old teenage Black boy. And same night, my 28-year-old nephew, he says, his mother is white and his wife is white. So he's biracial, and they live in a part of the country that's semi-racist. And so they have a 10-month-old daughter. And he says, I'm scared to take my daughter for a walk because if something happens, my immediate reaction would be to protect my family. But if I don't just run, then it's like I'm giving the murderer a reason because they'll claim self-defense if I fight back. So it's safer for me not to take my daughter for a walk. That's my 28-year-old nephew. So my 13-year-old nephew, 17-year-old nephew, 28-year-old nephew, all fear for their life in 2020. And I'm usually the auntie that I have something, right? Like, I've got resources, I've got connections. There's nothing I can do to address this. And I give that long story because that conversation happened the Thursday night after George Floyd's death. Friday, I go to work. I don't have it within me to not be emotional. And so by the end of the day, I decide I'm not a person who's going to sit in tears. And so I'm going to figure out how to do something. And part of that doing something was I serve as the senior sponsor for our Black Employee Resource Group. And so I was going to get counseling resources and things like that, because if who I have not lost anyone to COVID, I don't have anyone in my family who's been economically impacted by the job losses in the economic environment, and I'm emotional and I am stressed from what's going on, and I'm at a high level in the company, anybody that's actually got any of those other stresses in their life who looks like the people who are being killed for no reason is under 10 times the amount of stress.
And their managers need to know that they're not okay. And so that was the conversation that we started having and I kept saying, your Black employees are not okay. You can ask them and they're going to tell you they're okay, but they're not okay. So you just need to know that. And you also need to know that being silent right now is not an option, because silence is indifference at this point. And because I'll come back to my comment about which comes first, the chicken or the egg. Through all the conversations that I've had over the last month, I honestly do believe, because I've had white men and white women and Asian women and Asian men break down in tears in front of me and say, like, I want to say something, but I'm worried about saying the wrong thing. And so I've been the voice of comfort. I have said, I am willing to educate. I'm willing to talk. I'm willing to be vulnerable so that we can find a common ground. Because which comes first, the chicken or the egg? I think Black people feel like they have to show the brave face because they worry about indifference. They're worried somebody's going to say, well, he had a counterfeit $20 bill, so if he had just not broken the law, it wouldn't have happened. Or some other excuse. Or that one cop, they're just a jerk. That's not indicative of everything. And that just dismisses all the pain and the heartache. And so, because they don't want that reaction, because that just compounds on top of what you already feel, it's better to just grin and bear it. And I'm convinced from all the conversations that I've had with non-Black people over this past month is that they feel like they want to say something, but they're worried they don't understand. They're worried they'll say the wrong thing. They're worried they'll make somebody angry, or they'll come off as insensitive because they don't give enough context. And because of those fears, they choose silence, or they're waiting for the Black person to say something so they then know how to speak to them in a way that is going to be welcoming. So you got which comes first, the chicken or the egg, and neither's ever hatching, is what I think of is how we've gotten here. And so we've got to start talking, and we've got to stop making race a taboo topic, and we've got to talk about it and learn from it, because that's how we can start to heal from it. So that's pandemic one that's been going on for a really long time. And so advice of how to deal with this, I give 4 suggestions. One is reach out. And when you reach out, realize that at this point, it's been about a month. So lots of people have been reaching out to Black people. And so Black people are kind of fatigued. And you then have to understand what's this headspace of the person that you're reaching out to. Are they a person like me that's open to having the conversation, open to educating, open to having a dialogue? Or if they just say, I'm okay, you don't want to keep pushing. That means they don't really want to talk about it, or they don't want to talk about it right now. But the fact that you ask means a lot. So still reach out, still check in, because it means that you still care. Second is educate yourself. There are people like me who are willing to help with the education, but don't assume that's most people, because there are some people who will say it's not my job to educate you. For Black people, like when I was considered an Oreo as a kid, I knew how to code. I actually didn't code switch very well. That's why I was told that I talked white, because I didn't code switch. But that's code switching is a thing where you speak one way in one environment and another way in a different environment. But Black people have learned the dominant culture their whole lives. So it's just take time and invest the time and energy to learn what minorities have experienced throughout our nation's history. There's podcasts, there's books, there's movies. I am happy to give a whole list of resources to Rose and Sanyan that they can share, because I've been giving them in my church and my company and my nonprofit. I can tell you the ones that people have found easy to digest. I can tell you the ones that people have found most impactful for them. But take time to educate yourself. So 1, reach out. 2, educate yourself. 3, listen. So if you have educated yourself and you've now gotten to the point where you feel like you know that there's somebody who's willing to talk about how they feel, and you feel like you can approach it in the right way, listen. You don't need an action plan. You don't need to have a solution. You don't need to have like 3 senators that you're going to go call tomorrow. It would help if you make phone calls to Kentucky because Breonna Taylor's murderers still haven't been arrested. But you don't have to be ready to go do that. But you should be willing to listen and empathize. And if you're really courageous and feeling really bold, stand up for marginalized people. So stand up for Black people. Explain that Black Lives Matter is not a racist political statement. It's just a fact that Black Lives Matter too. Stand up for Asian communities who have been like vilified as the cause for the spread of coronavirus. Stand up for Mexican and Hispanic Latinx immigrants that are being called everything from coming over the border because of some of the insensitivities of the current administration in our country. So stand up when people say things that are inappropriate. Stand up for Native Americans and the fact that we keep taking their land and not actually paying them for it. And so like stand up for all of these marginalized groups, and the list goes on, like transgender communities. When you see something, say something. Because going back to the root of the conversation about race, as a white person, you can say things to other white people that will never be as effective coming out of my mouth. And so remember, you do have white privilege, but you can use it for good. Don't feel guilty. I always say, the goal is not white guilt. I don't want you crying in a corner because you've had advantages that I haven't had. Use your privilege for good. That's what is the most impactful thing you can do. On the flip side of how do you give hope with everything that's going on with coronavirus, so pandemic number 2 that came about in this past 12 months. Be empathetic. I've had members of my team who have lost loved ones. Someone lost a father. People have lost uncles. Like, be empathetic. You never know what someone is going through. And like, so lives have changed forever. Meet people where they are with their comfort. Try to give caution because some people want to act like the virus is gone and they don't want to wear masks and they don't want to stay indoors. So be a voice of reason, be a voice for science. And thirdly, give people hope. This won't last forever. If I could, there is an amazing poem that I'd like to read to everyone. If I know we're way over time, if that's okay.
Yeah, I would love to hear it, and I would love to maybe provide it in the resources that we can send folks after, if that makes sense, just with our time, because we are about 20 or so minutes over. But Laurinda, thank you. Thank you for your courage, your vulnerability, your transparency, your potency, your strength. I hope all of us can learn to develop just an ounce of your power, to become leaders, enablers, allies, and activate all of the growth out of today's times that we can. So thank you so much again. And without further ado, I'll just give it to Sanyan to close very briefly.
Rose, thank you for your wonderful moderating and questions. And Laurinda, what a powerful, inspiring evening. Thank you for your generosity of time. And some of the key takeaways, one is about resilience starts with leading yourself and understanding and discovering what you need, right? What you need and what your constraints are, and when we can seek help from others. And then the second is the power of communities. We can exercise the resiliency muscle, but by ourselves, it's only so much. And so we need our communities, our families, and our teams. And that comes with that we don't do it alone. It's a team effort. And lastly, so much of how you live out your life, it's about generosity and responsibility. That last part about how we can combat systematic racism, what you shared there, vulnerability is power, and you shared it. You shared your story so vulnerably, and therefore it was so powerful. Thank you for educating us And thank you also for giving us specific actionable tools that we can take action upon to be able to bear this mantle of leadership and take responsibility in making the world truly more equitable and truly better. And thank you all for being here and joining us in these COLE-MBAA Leading Through Challenges conversations. We will be following up with the resources that Laurinda mentioned, along with a few others. And have a wonderful, wonderful evening, everyone.